Hello, I'm David Witcher on the committee of the Halifax Civic Trust, and we'd like to introduce you to the Wakefield Gate and its history. We're starting here at the bottom of Dark Lane, Hipperholme, climbing up over Beacon Hill and then dropping down sharply into Halifax, going past the Minster and then on into what used to be Halifax's medieval centre. I'm standing by the plaque put up by the Civic Trust to commemorate 25 years of working for Halifax. It's about 1.5 miles, but it's rough and it can be slippy, so it needs boots. But the views at the top make it all worthwhile. This is Lower Place Farm, which used to be one of Anne Lister's properties, now beautifully restored, Grade 2.
The Wakefield Gate was the only packhorse track going eastward out of Halifax for at least 600 years, from before the time of the Norman conquest until the building of the first Turnpike road in 1741. Later on, it helped to make the town prosperous as the link to York and London for the cloth trade, and as the route to Hull for trading with Europe. This is Dark Lane, a medieval Holloway and one of the best preserved in Yorkshire. It had been damaged by a farmer's bulldozer, but in 1987 the Trust raised £14,000 from local donors to repair and protect the entire route and managed to get Dark Lane designated as an ancient monument protected by statute.
Look at the old sets here, recently cleaned off by the rains, taking off the mud and leaves. It's 12 feet deep here, worn by the packhorses over the centuries. Wow, you can't believe what a wonderful quiet spot this is so near to Hipperholme. But I'm going to continue my journey now. Now we've arrived at Upper Place Farm, another of the Anne Lister properties. It's a ruin now, but it's been replaced by the new Upper Place Farm a bit further up the hill. It's been churned up by horses and quad bikes, so it's really pretty slippery, and it's really a no-no for wheelchairs. But as long as you've got boots and you're careful, particularly when it's wet, it's absolutely fine. And the slope here actually isn't all that steep. It's much better than the other side where it drops very sharply into Halifax. We're getting to the end of the Dark Lane Holloway now, and you can see the gradient is slackening. We've done all the hard work, so within a minute we shall have the amazing views from the top. We're leaving the mud behind now, getting onto a decent hard road, and as you can see, there are no vehicles allowed here, so it's safe for families and great for a family day out. But as we're getting up, you can feel the wind. We're higher up and we're going on up to Beacon Hill.
Imagine you're an Anglo-Norman nobleman from Sandal Castle in 1120, eager to get to Errington for the hunting. Imagine you're a soldier from the Civil War, defeated at Adwalton Moor in 1643 and longing to get home to Halifax. Imagine you are Anne Lister, who was made famous by Sally Wainwright's BBC HBO series Gentleman Jack. She was a landowner at Shibden Hall, a great traveller and one of the first recognised lesbians, and her secret diaries, partly in code, have been designated by UNESCO as part of the memories of the world. After she took control of the estate in the 1820s and 30s, and when she was not travelling abroad, she would walk this way to Upper and Lower Place Farms to check on her tenants there and to press them to vote as she wished. Yes, well, you've got the Shibden Valley over there. Anne Lister's Shibden Hall is out of sight down the bottom, and the Lister estate would have taken in much of the land you can't see here and a chunk of the Shibden Valley as well. And then on the skyline you can just see the chimney of the Black Dyke Mill at Queensbury. We're in Barraclough Lane now, and this is the site of a now lost medieval settlement called Barraclough. And the remains are very faint. I'm no archaeologist, but it's possibly that flat area there could be where one of the houses was. And it was a strip development that went
down the road, down the hill to the next road.
So why do we call it Wakefield Gate? It's still widely known as the Magna Via, but we now know that that name was never used before the beginning of the 20th century, and Wakefield Gate has a much longer usage. Gate is nothing to do with gates that open and close. It comes from the Old Norse gata, meaning road. So you can thank the Vikings for that. It's just the road to Wakefield. So what is the significance of Wakefield? It goes back to the powerful Norman de Warens, who held the manor of Wakefield. It was exceptionally large, some 25 times the area of the average manor, stretching from Wakefield and Holmfirth to Todmorden, and the whole manor and its courts were administered from the de Warens Castle at Sandal, just south of Wakefield. The administration of the manor was thus a major source of all the travellers that made Wakefield Gate important back then. In front of the Walker Pit Tower there is the ruin of its furnace house, and together they are now designated as a monument. Anne Lister's Listerwick Pit was down Pump Lane behind us. Pump Lane takes you to Shibden Park, all part of the original Lister estate. The other reason for Wakefield Gate's importance in Norman times was ecclesiastical. The first William de Warren and his wife Gundrada endowed the Priory of St Pancras near their castle at Lewes. The priory was huge. The church nave was longer than the present Chichester Cathedral, and this needed money, lots of it. So Halifax and many other churches and manors were given to support the priory, making it the wealthiest in the country and generating yet more travellers to keep track of it all. The connection of Wakefield Gate with the First English Civil War is the Battle of Adwalton Moor, between Bradford and Driglington, on the ridge where the A650 now runs. The parliamentarian Fairfaxes, who had recruited 500 men from Halifax, were defeated there by the larger royalist force. So, cut off from their base at Bradford, Sir Thomas Fairfax retreated with his troops along the Wakefield Gate into Halifax.
We're at the top now, we've done the climbing, and behind me you can see the ventilation shaft for the Walker Pit. That's to the left, and then to the right you can see the ventilation shaft of the railway, which is tunnelled underneath. And as we're on the top here, it's a nice place to have a bite, and there's nothing like a good Yorkshire bacon butter. Well, there's a new sign here put up by the council. You've got Banktop up there, straight ahead down to Halifax, and then the Wakefield Gate behind me. I'm on the way down now, just going down towards the six-way junction. The path is pretty solid here, so it's perfectly safe. It gets quite a lot steeper and slippier further down, but this bit is okay.
We've done all the climbing now, and we're at the six-way junction. If we turn right, we can get to Shibden Hall. The route passes the castellated tower of the ventilation shaft of the Walker Pit, the coal mine named by Anne Lister after her lover, Anne Walker. It's the route that Anne Lister would have walked to visit Halifax, to attend church, to go to the library, and to visit her properties. She used to inspect her coal pits and check on the Rawsons who were stealing her coal from underground. Turn left, and it goes up to the famous landmark of the Beacon, with its sweeping views over Halifax.
Well, behind me you can see the bit of flat land which used to have a house on it called Wiscombe. Long gone now, but in its time there was a pub there called Wiscombe Dandy, which had, surprisingly enough, a sign outside saying, "This is Wiscombe Dandy and we sell good ale and brandy." But coming down this way, the path gets a bit narrower and more slippery, so you really need to be careful. It gets steeper further down, and you really want boots for this bit. And we talked about the pub called Wiscombe Dandy. As it happens, this section of the path is also called Wiscombe Dandy. And we're coming down before long we shall hit the elbow. It's a sharp turn to the right with some beautifully made sets, and you'll see them in a minute. Well, this is the elbow, and as you can see, there's some beautifully laid sets here, with the old craftsman making the best of what was a pretty tricky job. And I really wouldn't fancy trying to come down here driving a horse and cart. As you can see, the sets they have sort of steps on them to make it a bit more robust. But as we get to this bit, the erosion really becomes serious, and you're probably better off going to the left of them. Now, this is probably the trickiest bit of the path. It's the steepest bit, and the surface has really pretty much disappeared, so you just have to be careful. Take it slowly and just watch where you're going.
This part of the track appears regularly in the diaries of Anne Lister of Shibden Hall, and an amusing reference is dated 12th August 1818, when Anne reported,
"In the evening at 8:30, my aunt and I went to the top of Bairstow to see the fireworks played off from the Peace Hall. At 9:20, my aunt, Marion and I set off. Finding we saw little or nothing from the top of Bairstow, we dashed straight down the hill. My aunt, unable to keep her feet, slid down on an honourable part, Marion ditto, and we all laughed exceedingly."
This hillside had been developed, but after the wars, the council started some tree planting, and the Halifax Civic Trust members also helped with it and funded it. Well, we're leaving Beacon Hill behind us, and we've come down to Beacon Hill Road. It's fast and busy, so just watch. Be careful before you cross. Well, we're coming now to the section called Wiscombe Bank, and we're back on nice cobbles, but they do get slippery when it's damp, so you need to be careful. And it's an interesting area because, of course, it was a housing area. It's all been demolished, and you can still see just the remains of some of those houses. Well, this is one of the gate posts you've seen in the picture you've just been looking at, and of course there was an area of industrial housing here. It ended up as a slum quality and was cleared between the wars. And of course, in the picture you could see the town at the time, but the trees which have been planted pretty much obscure the view. Well, you can imagine the sense of relief you might have finally getting within sight of Halifax. And now, of course, you've got this wonderful view on the skyline, Square Church, below it the Minster and the Wainhouse Tower, and then over there you can just see the tower of the Town Hall. We've finished all the hard work now. We finished with the hills and the cobbles, so we're going down into Halifax and to look at the Minster, which is one of the finest and largest late medieval churches in Yorkshire.
Well, here we are at Halifax Minster. It was built in phases during the 15th century, and you can see in the north wall some of the stones from the original Norman church that was built here around 1120 by the Cluniac monks of the priory at Lewes. It was restored in 1879 by Sir George Gilbert Scott, a prolific architect, famous for designing the Albert Memorial in Kensington Gardens and the Great Hotel at St Pancras Station. Anne Lister regularly walked to church along the route we have just done and was baptised and buried here. Anne was an inveterate traveller, and she died in Georgia, aged 49. Her body was sent to Moscow to be embalmed, and it took 7 months for the journey back to Halifax. It was only in 2000, when some pews were removed, that the remaining fragments of Anne's gravestone were found.
This is what remains of Anne Lister's gravestone. We know she's buried in the Minster, but we're just not certain quite where. We're leaving the Minster now, continuing our journey to Halifax. We've now arrived in Woolshops, Halifax's medieval street, still with the same name. And over my left shoulder there is the Peace Hall.
This is the jewel in Halifax's crown, listed Grade 1. It's a huge open quadrangle where pieces of woolen cloth were traded. It opened in 1779, and it's the last surviving and complete Georgian cloth hall in the country. Here is the amazing new monument to the Duke of Wellington's Regiment, West Riding, now, after 304 years, absorbed into the Yorkshire Regiment.
We're at the top of Woolshops now. It's mostly been redeveloped, but here is the last half-timbered building where you can still go and have a cup of coffee. And interestingly, to the right, you will see the new firewall dated 1670, and they became fashionable after the Great Fire of London in 1666. I'm now going to visit the oldest pub in Halifax. This is the Union Cross. We know it was here in 1535, then called only the Cross, at the time when Henry VIII was still on the throne. It had a cockpit, and there was cockfighting and gambling and, of course, drunkenness. Talking of having a drink, having come over and worked up a thirst over Beacon Hill, I'm just going to go in to nip in and have a pint. That feels better. The Market Cross used to be somewhere here, we're not sure quite where, and in 1748 John Wesley came to preach on the steps of the Market Cross, but he got pelted with mud and stones for his pain. They were a rough lot in Halifax in those days, but it's quite different now, of course.
We are now in Crown Street, which used to be Halifax's medieval high street. The half-timbered shops used to extend forward, but in the 19th century the buildings were all cut back to the line of this shop, which was built in 1730, and is the oldest brick building left in the town centre. The Wakefield Gate continued westwards from here to link up the outlying parts of the Norman Manor of Wakefield and to reach Errington above Hebden Bridge, where parties from Sandal Castle would have gone hunting. The ancient track then went on into Lancashire.
Well, it's been a lovely day. I hope you've enjoyed my telling of the story of the Wakefield Gate. But for now, my time is up. But I do hope you will come back and walk it for yourself sometime.
If you would like to know more about Halifax Civic Trust, our work, or the history of the Wakefield Gate, just Google Halifax Civic Trust. And do think about joining as a member. We are all volunteers and would really welcome new members to help or just to support us if you don't have time to spare.